Thank you very much, Mauritia. Actually, I don't know how long I'm supposed to speak, but if you want to keep it strict, I'm sure you will do so. So I will figure out. And good morning from my side. It's beautiful weather, and actually, when it comes to social media and to the internet, it took us already, and us means maybe those used to the digital environment and the digital world, to explain colleagues and people outside that cookies are not necessarily made of dough and wheat anymore and milk. And nowadays, we actually have to explain that tweet isn't a sound of nature. So this is where we are. We do believe, and I've seen it personally as well as Marita during election campaigns, that the impact of social media when it comes to communicating with citizens to bring forward your point has developed so incredibly that in the last elections it was already a vital part of most campaigns, and I believe in 2014 when it comes up to the next European elections it will not only be vital but essential that you have a working network on social media to communicate, that you are able to basically underchannel even traditional news, because we all know as members how difficult it actually is to get your point in the news, and not only if you get your point in there, then basically it has to be reflected rightly and not the way necessarily a journalist sees it, but the way you said it. And social media is the easiest and best way to transport that. The one thing I believe people, and especially members, will have to learn, not only members of the European Parliament, but of any national parliament or anywhere else, it's not me. Oh, this is the buzz of social media. Basically, what one will have to learn is that social media does not only provide the channel where we can export and where we can explain what we're doing, where we can interact with citizens, but it also demands actually action from ourselves. All those being here around the tables are as aware about communication that they usually do everything right. But I would just like to ask you to do the experiment actually, or to check how many emails you send out to friends, to members of the European Parliament, to members of national parliament, and you don't even get the response that your email has been sent, or actually that your email has arrived, or any sort of reaction, meaning thank you very much for your email, we're going to deal with your issue, so on and so on. This is the minimum you have to do in communication, is to let your opposite actually know that you have been receiving his or her communication and that you will react. The same behavior applies actually to social media. It doesn't make any sense and it doesn't help just to create a tiny URL out of your press release and then to post this tiny URL on Twitter and say, I gave a press release about, I don't know, whatever is happening. Nobody will actually react to that. We have some very, very active colleagues who can show you how communication on the internet, especially with Twitter, will actually work. Maritia is very, very active, and if you follow her Twitter feeds, once in a while you might wonder if she does anything beyond, which I can assure you she does, but she's the living proof of being multitasking. If you follow colleagues very, very actively, you will see them tweeting out of committee meetings, out of plenary, out of group meetings, out of whatever meeting, and informing their constituents what they're actually dealing with. And then if they're really, really good, you will see that there's a dialogue which suddenly engages between both. The question is also, who do we focus on when using social media? You cannot address those who you're interested to address with the same medium at all the time. Sometimes it might work via social platforms, be it Facebook, who I see present. Sometimes it's via sort of short message services as Twitter, and sometimes you will have to use microblogs or other things. So when communicating, we would also have to focus on who do we actually want to address. But beyond the pure communication of social media, I think one of the most interesting, personally I believe, events, or how would you say in English, one of the most useful facts you can draw out of social media is that you can see, and for politics it would be very, very important, I believe, especially in upcoming elections, you can see what people are talking about. You can see what they're interested in. If you go through trend analysis tools, and if you actually analyze the low level in terms of under the classical media communication going on something like Twitter, Facebook, or other tools, you will actually see what people are interested in, which not necessarily is the same what is reflected in media. And sometimes you will even see that a topic is being discussed on a social platform, which then at a certain point will become so topical that it leaps from sort of microblogs into online newspapers into the real world. Personally, I believe it is highly valuable if we would use more these trend analysis tools which are possible through online medias. Well, I think one thing we would have to, and then maybe coming to an end, the European Parliament itself has to develop as well when it wants to communicate better with citizens. We do have about 3/4 of the MEPs, which is around 531, who have Facebook profiles, pages, or personal ones, with close to at least 800,000 combined friends and at least around 560,000 fans, which gives the EP a potential following, friends of at least about 1.3 million people we can address. I think this is a treasure which we have to use much, much, much better when we are communicating the European Union. The EP itself, the Facebook profile, was around 400,000 likes, and if we have a look at Twitter, we see that around 287 members of the Parliament use Twitter with a combined 400,000 followers and close to 200,000 tweets. And what will be actually very interesting, I think this is a step forward for European Parliament and for our daily work, is that it shall be soon be introduced that there will be a news hub on the EP's homepage itself, which combines basically all known MEP updates, be it Twitter or whatever, that are RSS enabled as a feed. Still not mine.
Sure.
Anyway. Still. Anyway.
It's a self-tweeter.
Apparently, I must have a bug on it, so it tweets by itself all the time. But again, to come back to this news hub on the EP homepage, I believe this will boost the visibility of what actually members are doing on social networks if there is this hub on the homepage which combines everything what is being communicated by our members. Can't help it now. And this is something which should definitely prepare us for the elections. But again, just to wrap it up probably, whatever is there on social media, the tools themselves are no use if you don't know how to use them, actually how to communicate with them. And they request much, much more attention from us than days before. Campaigning has become seriously more complicated, more complex, and it has been especially more intense because the presence of social media and tweets and other possibilities actually force us into a 24/7 alert modus that when things come up that we react quickly. There's a certain demand which has increased the speed of communication significantly. It is seriously difficult to always meet these expectations, especially because most of you and ourselves are very, very busy with the everyday work we're doing. So it's also a question when you deal with social media, how you actually manage the expectations which you produce. So I personally also would say that while dealing with social medias, do not pretend that you are 24/7 ubiquitous and that you sort of behave like a digital native, even if you're not. So because people then will become frustrated that they might tweet you, they might do something and you will not respond timely. So it's also a question of being realistic in terms of what we actually can deliver as members of the European Parliament. And in that question, again, management of expectation is vital, because otherwise people will be very frustrated if they want you to communicate as much as possible and in the end you will not do. Again, the impact of social media to communication is much, much more, I think, dimensional than we actually believe, because what we see now is sort of the nucleus, I personally believe, also in a shift of politics and political communication. We will see through social media and the input of citizens much, much more participation also in legislative processes. People will announce much more what they actually expect from politicians to do. And if we miss this point, if we miss to deal in a good way with the communication we receive out of citizens, what we actually will do, and I haven't seen one of them here, is sort of legitimate the existence of something like a pirate party, which is to all established parties, at least in the countries where you have pirates, certainly, a political challenge, I would say, because they have understood how to use media in a way which includes citizens in a much, much more enhanced and better way, because we've at least to my awareness, have seen that citizens don't necessarily want to become members of parties anymore. It doesn't mean that they're not interested in politics, but they just don't want to join the club in a way. So what they want to do is have a platform where they can say what they want to say, where they can give their input, where they can even work on a specific policy paper and sort of have the feeling that they have done something which is an impact and which changes it. But again, at the same time, they don't necessarily want to be a party member. Social media, ideal-wise, gives us the possibilities to include citizens without sort of hugging them to death, as the party sometimes might do. And in these terms, I hope that politicians, that parliament, that institutions understand how social media can enhance citizens' participation and transparency in legislative processes. I personally believe if we miss this opportunity, we actually are missing that society is demanding a change in communication, in political activity, and then if we don't supply these needs, they will look for those who will supply those needs. Thank you very much for your attention, and excuse me for the buzzing. I don't know where it came from.